she's going for a civil engineer now. She started out in
Okay.
Wyoming, she's gone for.
Okay.
All right, we're ready to go.
For 2 years.
All right.
in school.
Thank you. We'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, we perhaps should do this a little differently this evening. Just want to check in on everyone. Is that adequate, Dr. Carlson, to
Sure.
do it that way?
Yes.
Starting with Dan Schmidt. I know Dan had just texted that he needed to reboot, but Dan, are you with us? Okay, we'll come back to Dan. Karen Flatness.
Yes.
Travis Routh. Travis Routh. Okay, we'll go on to Joanne.
Sorry, Rick, I'm here. Couldn't hit the button.
Perfect. No, and I apologize. I should have given you a little warning on that. Joanne Maloney. Okay, and Rich
Here.
Mueller.
I'm here.
Neil Schlake is
I'm
present.
here.
And we'll go back to Dan Schmidt. Are you with us? Well, we will wait to hear back from Dan, but it sounds like we have everyone else with us, and he will join us momentarily, I hope. We have an agenda in front of us this evening. Are there any additions or corrections, Dr. Carlson?
No.
I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Schlake, seconded by Mr. Mueller to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Roll call. Everything's by roll.
Everything's roll call?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Routh.
Aye.
Neil Schlake.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt. Rick Schultz.
Aye.
All right, that's
All right, the agenda has been approved. Public comments this evening, we are not expecting any this evening. With that, we'll move right into the superintendent's report. Dr. Carlson, please.
Thank you. Let me try to make sure. Well, good evening, everybody. Just in addition to the my written report, just a couple highlights. Construction, I made a note for you that the trailer's been here now for, maybe 2 weeks. Fencing is up at the secondary building. Actually, last Friday or so, they removed several trees in back, and there is plans for digging to begin this week. So we continue to work through that process at both buildings. A reminder to the board, there has not been a reschedule of the next budget work session. As we present the preliminary budget tonight, there may be more discussion about coming back together for another budget work session. Virtual board meetings, we are giving our first try tonight. I want to acknowledge Angie Iseth, our technology coordinator, as well as Dan Petziger with Radio Link Internet for assisting. Even they were just here a few minutes ago assisting to make sure we were up and running, and hopefully it will only get better the next time as we work some of the bugs out. I just want to make a couple comments about where we're at with our distance learning, childcare, meals, those essential services that public schools are expected to provide. I just want to give a special thank you to begin with our paraprofessionals who are servicing and working and managing our child care, and also to our food service employees for preparing the meals every day. Those groups they're reporting here to the sites each day, And I just want to acknowledge them as well as so many others. I tell you, the list of thank yous is endless as you consider the significance of what has been accomplished since Monday, March 16th, when we as a district closed, but then beginning March 30th, when we got everything up and running, and not only our food and our child care, but also our distance learning. And so if you consider, the distance learning in itself, we have teachers, our paraprofessionals, we have drivers involved with that delivery. Our child care, I mentioned the paraprofessionals. Our community ed employees are involved in that. Our meal program, food service, paraprofessionals, drivers, custodians, office staff, so many are involved to make sure that that is going well. In both our buildings, we continue to have maintenance and custodial needs, cleaning, and different projects. You saw evidence tonight of technology. Angie and Nate Jensen are involved in so many ways of making sure every day our distance learning is working. And then, of course, now virtual board meetings are helping us through that. Physical and mental health issues, we have our nurses, we have social workers that are working and supporting our staff and our families, and then our office and administration, the work continues, and obviously ultimately our parents and our students, who really are the ones why we all are doing what we're doing to help serve those, and things look quite a bit different. It's not the same at all, but I just want to acknowledge, I know I've missed important folks, but in general, a lot is going on, and so just thank you to all involved. You have the written reports from Mr. Anderson and Mr. Bunn. I know that if you have, why don't I just give them an opportunity, if either one of them have any additional comments to add to the written reports?
I do not have anything additional to add.
Okay.
I would just echo what Dr. Carlson was saying in terms of thanking everybody. This is a not ideal situation, but a pretty incredible journey that we're enduring right now. I was on a lot of different Google Meets today, watching teaching and learning going on, and I can tell you one thing. Even though this is not great, we are going to be a lot better because of this. We have been forced into learning things that maybe we never would have tried, or made an excuse that we didn't have time to do so. So I'm very proud of everybody.
Any questions, board members, for the three of us? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Carlson. Any board member comments this evening that we'd like to add?
Mr. Schultz, I have one comment. I think I can speak on behalf of the entire board. We would really like to thank everybody from Dr. Carlson on down for everything they've done to get this up and running and smoothly. I know there's been a few hiccups, but everybody's done an awesome job.
I agree. So, all right, thank you, Rich. Anyone else? With that, we'll move on. The next regular meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 18th, and that will be at the Elementary School Media Center at 6:30. And at this time, I'll ask Dr. Carlson to introduce the consent agenda items. Dr. Carlson?
Thank you. As part of your consent agenda, you have the board meeting minutes from the regular meeting on March 16th, as well as the March 30th budget work session. You have board bills amounting to $491,761. And then we have quite a list of donations that I want to make sure I bring up. The list includes Jane Decker making a donation to our shop class, miscellaneous wood projects. We have Carl and Tammy Pearl, donation for our hotspots of $200. AWAG, we have a number, as you can see, to our clay target program. $200 from AWAG, Barter Machine, $300. Channel Seed, $500. Dave's Body Shop, $200. Doverstein Backhoe, $250. Friends Wayne and Associates, $250. Farmer State Bank, $150. L&D Ag, $250. Firemen's Relief Association in Richland, $500. NRHEG Drag Racing, $100. Olson Excavating, $500. Raymond Farms, $250. Rustler Seeds, $100. Schleich Trucking, $500. Sequoia Landscape, $200. The Shop of Wasika, $100. Swinsky Flooring, $200. South Fork Seed, $200. Sportsman Stop, Wasika, $100. TNT Body Shop, in Heartland, $250. In addition, we did note the Nokomis donation, $5,976 as well. And then Bjorn Peterson, I tell you, made a wonderful donation of the distance learning bags, and we're so much appreciative of that donation. With a total of about $11,276, and we've been keeping count, and I think we're at around $49,330.77 for the year. Going on with the consent agenda, within our workforce area, resignations, we thank the following for their service to the school district. Ashley Tolsman, secondary school paraprofessional, effective April 8th. And she's been with us this school year, so thank you. Renee Morvek, our speech and language pathologist, for effective at the end of this school year. And Renee has been with us for the last 4 years. Carrie Olson, sixth grade teacher, effective at the end of this school year. Carrie's been with us since August of 2012, so we wish Carrie the best. And then Terry Engel, our curriculum instructor coordinator, effective at the end of this year. As you recall, Terry retired from the school district at the end of the at the end of last school year, after serving the school district for 34 years. And so thank you, Terry, for your years of service. We have 2 more items on the consent agenda. We have the Interquest Detection Canine Minnesota agreement, so we're asking the board to, part of the consent, to renew our agreement. And then statewide enrollment options, 2 students who have moved away, returning to our district, and 2 students that moved into our district is remaining with their past school district. Those are the items that are part of the consent agenda. If any board member wishes to consider any of those separately, you simply request to have it pulled, and otherwise entertaining a motion to accept the agenda as presented, followed by a second and then a roll call.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mueller, seconded by Mr. Schleich to approve the consent agenda items as presented. Start with a roll call vote.
All right, Karen Flatness, sorry, aye. Joanne Maloney. Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Rauth.
Aye.
Neil Schleich.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. Thank you. Moving into reports, we have a preliminary 2020-2021 staffing plan. Dr. Carlson, please.
Well, thank you. Tonight I'm presenting the preliminary 2020-2021 staffing plan to you for your review. The board will not be asked to take action on approving the plan tonight, but will be asked to approve the final plan at the May school board meeting. So I will highlight for you information included that was also in your staffing memo as part of your board packet. The development of the annual staffing plan is a process that begins early in the school year and includes a number of events, beginning with an examination of the student enrollment forecasting. The staffing plan follows board policy 630 as far as class size. It includes guidelines on determining the number of classroom sections at the elementary level per grade level, as well as guidelines on determining the number of course sections at the high school level. The staffing recommendations for next year are based on levels believed to be best for student learning and at the same time fiscally responsible. The process in developing the staffing plan includes meeting with the principals to review staffing needs based on student enrollment projections and course requests. For grades 9 through 12 in particular, student course requests drive many of the decisions to be made in order to determine the number of staff needed in a specific curriculum area. Attention is given to minimizing the number of sections with low enrollment. So tonight serves as an initial or preliminary recommendation and report to the board. And as I previously said, I plan to ask the board to take action on the final plan at the May school board meeting. I've summarized staffing changes I am recommending based on my work with the building principals. I've divided the report by elementary, secondary, special education, title, other building and district staffing considerations, and then the staffing plan budget impact. You also see, as part of my report to you, a section on unmet workforce needs for ongoing consideration. At this time, enrollment projections suggest an increase of about 16 students in bridges through grade 12, or about a 1.9% increase. When you're comparing to the same time a year ago, where we were projecting the 2019-2020 enrollment. So, and what you actually approved is what we're comparing to a year ago. When you, at the same time, adopted the 2019-2020 budget in June of 2019. At this time, enrollment projections suggest an increase of about 19 students in our bridges through grade 5 regular classrooms. Again, when comparing from a year ago when you approved the 2019-2020 staffing plan and budget. The plan includes maintaining the same number of classrooms at 19. The average enrollment for bridges in kindergarten to grade 5 for 2019-2020 has been about 371 students, resulting in an overall class size average of about 19.5 students based on the 19 sections. So the projected enrollment for 2020-2021 is 375. So that's, now you can see that given the actual to now, or what we're projecting, is not that much different. There are no planned changes in regular education licensed staff at the elementary school. There is a slight decrease in the projected student needs in our developmental adaptive physical education programming, which is resulting in a, what we would say, a 0.2 FTE reduction. So overall, the elementary FTE teaching staffing plan includes an equivalency of 31.6 FTEs or full-time employment compared to 31.8 currently. As always, we'll continue to monitor the enrollment changes from now to September and give close attention to changes, especially at the bridges and kindergarten level. We believe the kindergarten level is close to capacity and will require consideration for staffing adjustments if more than 5 students were to be added. We believe there is capacity of up to perhaps 7 students at grade 2 and up to 10 or more students at the other grade levels. And just a reminder that the principal has the authority to make adjustments in staffing between grade levels as long as the overall staffing level of the building does not change. This shows you the staff level at each grade level along with the projected class size per section. Again, it is within the principal's authority to make staffing level adjustments between those grade levels as long as there's not an overall change to the building. For example, as we continue to monitor enrollment, one grade level may be reduced a section while another increased. We don't necessarily expect that or forecast that, but that is always a possibility. Either way, the principal would be able to make that decision. If a change occurred where a section was requested to be added and no reductions to offset the increase, then I would work with that principal to make a final determination and recommendation to the board if it involved an overall increase in staffing. You may recall that we had that situation going into this school year with 5th grade. At the secondary level, we are forecasting a fairly stable enrollment in grades 6 through 12. Noting right now a slight decrease of 3 students, but pretty much stable. Adjustments in the number of course sections result in a total change in the number of FTEs in the instructional staff of a decrease of about 0.6 FTE. By the way, when I say a 0.6, for example, you might want to think for our regular classroom teachers, a full instructional load is 5 class periods, making up a 1.0 FTE. And so each class period, instructional period, is equal to a 0.2 FTE for each semester. So this year, the secondary school has had an equivalent of about 37.1 FTE licensed staff, and I'm just going to stop there to clarify, when we say a 0.1, what does that mean? Do we actually employ 37 teachers plus 0.1 teachers? No. 37.1 is an equivalent number. It's a measure of how many full-time equivalent positions we have. So we include overloads, for example, in that number. And so that's where, same thing with the elementary school, there were some part-time positions that, again, make that not an even number. So with 37.1 FTE licensed staff, based on the number of course selections and also specialist positions, this included, for this current school year, we've had 1.2 FTEs just in overload assignments. So that's where a classroom teacher is teaching an additional class period. For next year, part of this plan, the secondary school is planning for a total equivalent FTE of 36.5 with 0.4 FTEs for overload assignments. It should be noted that this FTE does include our student success coordinator, social worker, school counselor, and activities director. We identify increases and decreases, and so on your board memo, I showed those more specifically as far as the decreases, including business education, English, science, social studies, Spanish. I can tell you those come in the form more of an overload and not a reduction in a person per se. In determining whether to cancel a course, Factors, you notice that we are recommending the cancellation of a total of 9 courses. And so factors that we consider are staff availability, the minimum size guidelines that we follow based on our board policy, past trends in the number of requests versus scheduled in the start of the year. So, for example, there sometimes are trends where you have students select a course, and then by the time scheduling takes place, there usually are conflicts with what students select. And so we go through those conflicts and sort through those, and sometimes it ends up in that original request number going down. It can work the other way too. It can go up based on students moving from one course to another. We look at course sequence, including capstone courses or college preparation courses, and so on. So part of your board memo, you see the courses, these areas that are looking at being canceled. I do want to note that one unusual curricular area, the family and consumer science area, we are moving forward and canceling 2 courses that actually had a number of students request both. And we're doing that simply because of the capacity within our instructional staff. We have 1 teacher in that area, and this staffing plan already has her identified for an overload for both semesters. So there are a number of students that we're going to have to move to other courses, and what happens to any of these students that are listed on the canceled course list, these numbers, they meet with, for example, our school counselor, and they are asked to look for another course to select. So that is what needs to happen. I mentioned overload assignments. At this time, we've identified the family consumer science area, which I already mentioned, and our math area up for an overload, totaling 0.4 in that. Per our board policy, we have some exceptions. In other words, they may have not met that number 12, which the policy talks about a minimum number, but there are exception reasons for that. I mentioned previously about either capstone or ending courses, sequence courses, college preparation courses, some other factors. And so we have a short list of those in our ag education, again in our math area, music, and science. This chart shows the change in actual enrollments, with the exception of the far right column that is the projected numbers for next school year. And these numbers right now, you see it noted that our early childhood special education students are not included in these numbers. These numbers are really what drive the number of regular classroom sections for us at the 2 buildings. So you'll note that when comparing the actual enrollment numbers as of this past March 31st with the projected numbers, you actually see a projected increase of about 3 students overall, from 861 actual March 31st to 864. Earlier in the presentation, I noted numbers that compared from this time a year ago of what the board approved to what we're projecting. Now this chart is really comparing the actual of where we're at this year, or at least back on March 31st, with what we're projecting. So you can see overall a fairly stable enrollment that what we're projecting as part of this staffing plan. So some other considerations, part of this plan that I just want to note for you. I already mentioned back in the elementary, the planned reduction in the developmental adaptive Phi-Ed area. There are no planned changes in our Title I or paraprofessionals in our community education at this time. What I don't have in your report is anything real detailed with community ed as far as school-age care and what we might be projecting for next year. This plan reduces the curriculum and instruction coordinator position from 0.5 FTE to a 0.2 FTE, so a 0.3 reduction. We are working on a plan, administration is working on a plan on how do we address that continued reduction. You may recall that a year ago, going into this school year, that position was reduced from 1.0 to 0.5, and now this plan reduces it further. There is an additional 0.2 FTE assigned, so again, an additional class period assigned to the role of the activities director. This is in conjunction with the offset within our adaptive Phi-Ed needs. And so this enables us to continue to have a full-time physical education person as well. And this would be a year-by-year plan as far as the change to the activity director position. But it assists us in the overall staffing and being able to staff fully our physical education and our day program staffing in order to do that. And then finally, as far as this slide, I want to just, you'll see that there's a 0.6 FTE in a staffing contingency. And you'll remember that, or you may remember that in past years, I've typically mentioned how it would be best to include a contingency, a funding for staffing contingency. We have never done that at this time, but I would have to say to you, in at least 3 of the last 4 years, we've ended up adding teaching positions and or paraprofessional positions. This year, I think it would really be responsible of us fiscally to include this at this time because of a couple factors. Earlier with the secondary, I had mentioned the large class sizes in the family and consumer science area, that we are having to move those students. We are watching closely of where those students move, and that could possibly generate some overload needs in other areas that have the teaching capacity to take on an overload. Also, in our student success coordinator area, we are monitoring that closely, as well as we're so pleased with how our REACH program has gone. And also what we've noticed a little bit of an uptick is in our credit recovery program. That's more of an online program, but our student success coordinator manages that program, and we've seen an increase in needs for those students. And so because of that, we're watching that position closely and see how that may play out as far as for next year and whether or not that would require an overload or not. I just will make note of some ongoing unmet workforce needs that we continue to identify as a staff in the school district. We've talked about overall teaching and learning specialists, whether that's, and again, how that's associated with reading and math and so on. Also in the area of mental health and behavioral specialists. And we've talked in the past about part of our communication focus area as far as our strategic plan and doing more in the area of communication and public relations. And so talking about that communication coordinator. And this is actually one that we've already accomplished to a great degree, is within the area of community education. And so that, I think we've accomplished that already throughout this past school year. So to summarize, when comparing this staffing plan with the current staffing levels, we are projecting an overall budget reduction impact of approximately $20,000, which really shows up in that curriculum instruction director or coordinator position. That's the only position that this plan includes as far as reducing separate, that's not really driven by enrollment. All the other adjustments in staffing really are driven by enrollment, especially any reductions. And so this is the only position that would be not driven by enrollment. I already noted the staffing contingency. Again, when we get to the school year, if they're at the start of the school year and into that, if there's not a need to make any additions, then that $36,000 would not be accessed. So I mentioned the overall impact, about $20,000. That's based on what we know today and the assumptions that we included as far as the staffing. So a lot of information there, but at this time, happy to take questions, comments. I know both Mr. Anderson and Mr. Bunn are available and ready to respond to your questions as well. So, board members, questions, comments? Mr. Anderson or Mr. Bunn, is there anything that I may have overlooked or missed right now?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
No.
Well, I tell you, again, we will continue to work on this. Now, next up, we'll be presenting the preliminary look at the budget. And so, obviously, a significant part of that is personnel related, which is driven in large part to this staffing plan. And so, board members, it will be important that as we go through the coming weeks, please, if you have any questions based on tonight's report, please don't hesitate to reach out and contact me, and then that will be helpful as we move through the coming weeks, because our intent is to come to the board in May, at the May 18th board meeting, and ask for consideration for approval of the staffing plan. Okay,
Thank you. We'll move right into the 2021 budget then. Dr. Carlson, please.
I'm going to ask Ms. Christopherson is going to join me, and we have, as soon as the power clears up, so we have prepared a brief overview of the budget development process and where we're at as far as the development of the 2020-2021 budget. And when we're through, we'll be happy to respond to any questions that you have for us. I like always to start out that with the development of the budget, it's important that the budget reflects the district's vision, mission, and core beliefs. The vision really sets the course and direction for the district by describing what we believe we must become and strive to reach, which is to be that school district of choice inspiring excellence in academics, arts, and activities. Our mission of our school district describes our purpose and focuses directly on the service we provide our students. And so our purpose has continually been focused on student learning and development, and as we empower our students with the knowledge and skills to succeed. And the core beliefs guide our behavior, actions, and decisions. So as we move forward as a school district, it will be essential for the budget development process leading up to the approval next month to be aligned with and support what we determine as a school community to be most important for us, our children, and the future of our school district.
The preliminary budget being presented tonight reflects some of the assumptions listed there. The $200,000 from fund balance reflects your actions on March 30th. In addition, we've identified a tentative list of strategies that we're gonna include in the recommended budget in May. Forward. So this is the projected 2021 budget that was presented to the board on March 30th. This did not take into account any of the items that will be listed here next. This shows a projected fund balance in 2021 of about 22.9% based on that previous slide. So then after we go through some additional items, we'll show you what that does. A few of the things that have changed since we were together March 30th. We haven't done a lot yet with the revenue side of things. We're still waiting for the state to get us more information, but workman's comp, we are in the process of bidding that, but they contacted us and told us to plan on a 100% increase. We'll see what happens, but at this point we had to go ahead and include that. So it's about a $40,000 increase since we last talked. The technology budget, there were a few items that needed to be added to that. So right now, the numbers we're showing you shows an increase in the technology budget of $26,000 since March 30th. And then the preliminary staffing plan that Dale just went over shows that $20,000 C&I reduction. Again, here is the list. I won't read each one to you. You can do that starting with the fund balance reduction there on the top, along with a list of things that total about $128,000. Some of these things I think you've seen, maybe mentioned a few other things towards the bottom.
And I think it's those items more down towards the bottom that may have not been discussed back on March 30th as much.
Just pulling one out there that discontinue paying for ACTs. We've been doing that for a number of years, or how has that been operating in the past?
Yeah, and Mr. Bundy may want to help me out on discontinued paying for ACT. We as a school district for the last, well, it goes back a few years ago when the state required public schools to pay for, well, and there was a year we were actually reimbursed. I don't know if that was the correct term.
That's where I was confused.
We'll say reimbursed.
Okay.
And I think that might have only been for 1 year.
Correct.
And so since then, that might have been already maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah, maybe it's just been the last few years. that
Yeah.
we've been-
Sure.
And since then, we've made a commitment as a school district to still pay for one test to each junior
Okay.
that is scheduled through, we're given a window usually to schedule that in the school, and we've done that, and we've paid for that. We, unless things have changed, I think that the state, there is still a so-called reimbursement for those students as far as who qualify for free and reduced lunch. But other than that, we've picked up the bill for providing our students that test. And so this would include that piece. We've also been, the last couple of years, we've been paying for a practice test, for practice ACT tests, and so that's been part of this discussion as well. Mr. Bunn, anything to add to that?
No, you hit it on the head. The state there for a while, I think 1 year, reimbursed us, and then they decided there wasn't enough funds to do that anymore. So yeah, but we had tried to provide opportunities the last few years, and so that's kind of where we're at.
So it might be a little confusing. A couple slides ago, I told you we added 26,000 for technology, and then now we've put up here, now we're gonna, a group of them are gonna sit down and see if they can't scale that back a little bit. And this shows maybe scale that back another 10,000 and see if we can still accomplish what we want. Okay, so after we plug those numbers in, you can see then what it does to the difference in the general fund. Just under that target of 200,000 that was talked about on March 30th. This shows projected impact then on the fund balance based on the preliminary budget presented. Again, you know, this is still just a reminder, we're making a lot of assumptions. We have no updates on 1920 because the list of unknowns is too great. We don't even know if we're coming back to school, let alone how this is gonna play out. So we're making some assumptions on 1920, and then we're plugging these numbers in on 2021. So this, now we get into this broad view of our preliminary budget for next year compared to the current year adopted revenue budget. So again, what we approved last May, not what we've been adjusting along the way. So from a year ago till now, you see an increase in revenue in the general fund of over 3.3%, an increase in food service of about 1.3%, an increase in community ed of about 50%, and that's primarily related to some of these new programs, school age care and whatnot that Macy has been a part of starting. And then of course a significant increase in debt service, mostly due to the successful referendum. So that's what we'll be bringing in, because then you will see the increase in expenses under debt service, you know, to start paying our bonds off. All right, here we are on the expenditure side of things. So comparing the current year adopted budget with what we are projecting, you see a planned increase in the general fund of over 4%, food service just over 3%, planned increase in community ed spending of just under 40%, and debt service goes up 117%. So comparing the anticipated revenue with planned expenditures, you can see we have a budget deficit of about 200,000 in the general fund and roughly 20,000 in debt service. We're projecting a slight increase in food service, and community ed's showing an increase of about 15,000 at this point. But leading up to that next board meeting, we'll just continue to make adjustments and in our forecasting and planning. So that's really as much detail as we were gonna go into on 2021. We have a few other things to talk about, but as far as this goes, does anyone have any questions?
What's the deal with the workman's comp? Any back on that?
Yep, so the companies are starting to take a look at what we've had going on, and they have a lot of questions, and they're gonna bid it to where they think they can come out okay, you know. So
a usage issue that is
Yep.
over.
Yep. We do a lot of things, you know, we have health and safety people, we have insurance companies come here and do walkthroughs. We feel really good about what we do, but things happen. Yeah. It's been a few years, boy, again, you lose track, maybe, well, it's as long as we've gone with this Jensen Insurance Agency 3-4 years ago now. When we bid and moved over to him, we saved about 100%. Again, it's not
Yeah.
him. He goes out to different companies.
So,
So we saw a substantial savings a few years back, and now we're creeping right back up to where we had been. So again, that's, we believe, worst case scenario, so we'll see what actually happens. I think I'll have those by May. We have to have them by June, but we'll see. Anything else specifically on this PowerPoint? Okay, so I touched a little bit on 1920. We just can't even begin to guess. I have a long list of things that we'll start adjusting once we find out if we're staying in school or not staying in school. And then we'll still have some unknowns as far as funding. I don't know if you follow things, but you know, things change every day. So that's that. Last year, the legislature set the per pupil funding increase of 2% for this year, 2% for next year. They're telling us they're, 99% sure we can count on the 2% for next year? You know, 2 months ago, you saw how the state was doing. I was really hoping for another 1% for next year, but of course that's all, you know, but they're pretty confident we can still plan on the 2%, but what more than likely, or what we're used to back in like 07 through 09 when they froze funding, is what they do is when the state gets into a cash flow problem, they slow up paying us. So they meter out, like during the fiscal year, we typically get 90% of our money. And then over the course of the following 3 months after the year ends, we get another 10, okay?
Mhm.
When they get in all the final numbers and the student counts and whatnot. It's gotten for sure as bad as 70-30, and that's the kind of thing that we have to assume is probably gonna happen, okay? So the state balances their cash flow on us. That's why we have to have that healthy fund balance, because we have to use that to cash flow as we're waiting for our money. We'll eventually get it, but not in the timelines we need to pay our bills on time, right? But back in that 07-08, we were in a position where we had a line of credit set up locally and we were ready to go, and we never had to use it because of where we were sitting with our fund balance, but it was close.
Right, that's
Yeah.
when Wellen was here?
Yeah. So that's it. So we're hoping we still get our 2%, but we're gonna assume we're probably gonna get it a little slower. And then after that, it gets worse. They told us plan on 0% and 0% for the following 2 years. You know, to do anything different than assume flat right now would not be in our best interest. So we have to tighten things up, or it's just something to think about, okay? Nothing is guaranteed, but we all know that we're gonna be paying for this for years.
So perhaps a more reason why I would encourage the board to come back together and have more conversation specific to budget, not only next year, but more importantly, even beyond next year, or where we're going. I know one of the intent was to talk more about on the revenue side and some more conversation about that plan, but as Ms. Christopherson alluded to, it doesn't take much to really think through this, that as a 0% increase after next year, I mean, where would we be sitting right now if we were looking for this coming year at 0% versus 2%. And so tonight's not necessarily the time to get really far into that discussion, but something that as we try to get the 2021 budget kind of set and already have made that decision to utilize some of our fund balance and stay within that planned target based on what we know today. We've already known that we're going to have to take that step of some kind of corrective action, whether on the revenue and or expenditure side. And that's, we're beginning to take some action on that expenditure side, even with this budget. We're probably at close to $130,000, $140,000 right now in planned reductions. So we have some work to do, especially multiple years, even beyond next year. And especially because of the last month, 2 months of what's happening and what will continue to happen. Any other questions regarding what was presented tonight?
Great.
Again, no action tonight, but we hope that we are able to put things together for you in a month at the May 18th board meeting.
Great, thank you for that information. We will move into an audit proposal. We have some comparables and then a recommendation following the comparisons.
Yeah, so this real simple slide just summarizes the three firms we heard from in alphabetical order, but it also happens to be low to high if you look through those numbers. Again, Eide Bailey is the firm who we've been with since, about 1987. It's changed hands. But anyway, this is how the bid results came in. The second document attached there is just the complete proposal from Abdo, Ike, and Myers. They were the low bid. So we didn't include all three proposals, but just theirs. Those folks were out, sat down, introduced themselves. Corrine actually knew one of the auditors because they happened to audit the city of New Richland. So they had been in town to sit down with Wayne and whatnot. So that is how that came out. So I think the recommendation.
Any questions about the process? This is something that you had approved to move forward with the process and to secure proposals. And I just want to thank Carla for her good work with that. And so tonight you have the recommendation. And if there's no questions, we'll be looking for a motion to approve the 3-year agreement as presented. And that would require a second, followed by a roll call vote.
I'll make a motion to go with that, what was the name of it?
Abdo.
Yeah, the low priced one.
I'll second.
Oops, I missed that one. Who'd that come from? Trent, sorry. Motion made by Mr. Schlake, seconded by Travis Routh to approve the low bid Abdo and Myers for 15.5 in 2020, 15.8 in 2021, and my glasses aren't big enough, $16,100 in 2022. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Flatness, could I call on you for a roll call vote, please?
Sure can. Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Routh.
Aye.
Neil Schlake.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. With that, that concludes our business for this evening. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schlake, seconded by Travis Rao to adjourn. All in favor, roll call vote.
Yep.
for Ms. Flatness. Thank you.
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney,
Aye.
Rich Mueller,
Aye.
Travis Rout,
Aye.
Neil Schlake,
I.
Dan Schmidt,
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you,
And by
everyone.
the way, you
Thank
guys
you.
aren't getting stars on your calendar very good either.
Thank you, everyone.
See ya.
Here, I brought my water. Thank you for the water.
You're welcome.
I'm glad you took call me normal.
You are normal.
Dale, can you hear me still?
Yeah?
Just a second, we're trying to.
Saturday.
Good drawing day.
Surfing today.
Yeah.
See ya.
You planting? You planting?
No. Tomorrow?